You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. In this episode, I chat with Devon Adrianne, a self-taught photographer turned coach who transformed her passion into purpose during one of life's toughest chapters. As a young mother of two navigating divorce, Devon didn't just start a business. She rebuilt her life through the lens of entrepreneurship. We explore her remarkable journey from full-time photographer to mentor, discussing how she redefined success on her own terms. Her story powerfully illustrates how career pivots can become pathways to both professional fulfillment and happier parenting. Devon, welcome to Imperfect Adulting.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Are you ready for a fun chat?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Awesome. All right. So today, as you already know, because you're the guest, we are going to talk about changing your career, changing your profession to match and support a life that you want for yourself. I think this is a conversation a lot of people are going to be interested in.
hmm This is a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. So I'm really excited to dive in.
Awesome. All right. So let's rewind time just a teeny tiny bit
Mhm.
to before you made this change. Like, so before you were thinking about it, before you made the change, you are a photographer by trade. What did your life and business look like before you made this shift?
Yeah, lots of hours out of the house shooting weddings and sessions. So weddings were kind of like the bigger, longer days that would keep me kind of like away from my family and stuff like all weekend. Um, Rewind just a tiny bit more. And before I started photography, I was a waitress. So I always worked on the weekends. And then I started my photography business while I was in the restaurant industry. And when I wasn't serving tables on the weekends, I went straight into weddings. So I always worked on the weekends. And as my kids got older and got more into extracurricular activities and things like that, of course, they had, things that were scheduled on the weekends and I had to miss them. So I was working a lot, I felt like I was just trading so much time for money. And I just really burnt out on it. I just really didn't want to be away from everybody, like my children and my significant other all the time and the dogs and the house. And I just felt like it was it was just taking away all the things that I really wanted to start my business to begin with, because I wanted to own my time and be a more present mother. And next thing I knew, I was booking 2, 3 weddings every weekend and gone all weekend. And then I was shooting in the evenings during the week to get that golden hour light as a photographer. So when the kids were home in the evenings and during the school week, I was missing out on time then too. So it was just like a lot of work outside the house, which was kind of counterintuitive for why I became, an entrepreneur in the first place, because I wanted to make my own schedule to be there for my family. So it kind of got to the point where I was just like, I don't know that this is really what I want to do. And do you want me to go into my pivotal moment yet? Or
Not yet. Let's back up. So let's
okay,
back
okay.
up
I was
because we're
like,
just getting to know you. This is a story about you and you know your life story, but let's back up just a teeny tiny
yes.
bit and I'll walk you through it for the listeners. So let's talk a little bit about what your family looks like
Mhm.
and who they are. So tell us as little or as much as you like about the people you live with, your family, kids, partners, pets, where you live, stuff like that.
Yes. So I feel like I've had a crazy journey in my family life. I I have 2 children.
Okay.
They are now 13 and 15, almost 16. So I always have to like slow down, like she's not 16 yet. But 13 and 15. Um, Rewind back to when I was younger. I had my first when I was 22.
Okay.
I got pregnant with her. Married her dad, and then we had our second. That marriage turned out to be not great. And towards the end of that is when I decided like I was in just a really rough situation with with our family life and with like my husband at the time. And I was like, this is not how I want my future to look like forever. I was, serving tables. I had two young children. I had my second when I was 24. I turned 25 right after he was born. So I was like 25 with two young kids and serving tables in a bad marriage with a narcissistic, mentally abusive person. And I was like, something has to change. I had no experience in photography or in business or anything, but I was like, I've always loved photography, and I said, I'm gonna become a photographer. Um, so I bought myself a little camera and ended up leaving my husband at the time and kind of going out into single parenthood for a couple years while serving tables and building my photography business, which was crazy. And
Yep.
I don't know how I did it, and I don't know how I'm still shooting 11 years later, but we managed to persevere, and there was like it was the only option. Like I needed to build this business. I needed to make something more of my life and make more money and own more time and all the things. Um,
Okay, so that was
so
actually, so you
oh,
got two
the sun
kids.
just came out.
You got two kids, you've been married, divorced, and it sounds like remarried.
Well, I have a significant other now, but we've been together for a long time, but we're not married.
Okay, so it's
But
new partner. And then the next thing I was going to ask you was about that. I actually talked to a lot of people who are photographers. And so I was going to talk to you about the way you chose that as a business, which you just talked about. One of the things that really surprised me as a young mom. So I was a stepmom and then I was a mom. And one of the things that really surprised me in being the parent of a young mom is how professional life, like working for someone else, really actually doesn't fit into the family calendar. And I had known that I had seen people struggle. Like I had seen people make that decision in front of me. I just didn't understand it until I was living it. Like why everyone quits their job and takes up like an entrepreneurial gig. So, but what were the things like talk us quickly through like what about you said you love photography and you were drawn to entrepreneurship. Do you remember your thoughts about that? Like what were the things that were driving you in that direction when you were in that spot was like it has to work. It has to work because what I'm doing now doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't even know what necessarily drew me to photography. It was just a friend of mine was doing it as a hobby, and he was taking photos of my kids for me when they were little. And I just remember being like wanting to pose them differently or shoot differently. And I was like, wait, I could just do this myself, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
I really didn't know. I felt like it was just almost like a pipe dream. And I was like, I mean, maybe I could be a photographer. I've always been a little creative, and I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And I put my mind to it, and I was just like, okay, I love photography, but that's not really why I'm doing this. I feel like I'm doing this mainly because I want to work for myself. Because you're right, like working for other people, having small children, and then even being a single mom with small children, it's not feasible. Like when the kids get sick from school, like you can't just go pick them up, because you're at a job, you're at a work. You can't just
Yeah.
leave work and go get the kids. So, and
Or if there's no
my,
school, like if the because
yeah,
there's
if
like
there's no
when they're
school.
little, there's only school like every third day. It's like today is a
Yes.
holiday again.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just was like, there were just things that I wanted as a mom too. Like I really wanted to be able to take them to school every day and pick them up from school every day. I didn't want them riding the bus, not anything against buses, but I wanted to be the one to tell them I love you, goodbye every single morning. Like, have a good day. I wanted to be the first one that they talk to after school to be like, how was your day? Did anything interesting happen? Like, if they wanted to like divulge how their day was, I wanted to hear it like as soon as possible, as soon as they were excited to hear it. So that was like, I don't know, just something that was really, really important to me. I think my kids and my relationship with them and how I wanted to raise them was really my driving factor in like why this had to work, because I wanted to be at every, like in elementary school, they had award ceremonies like every 9 weeks or whatever. And my kids were always, or still are, always very smart. So they always got presented with awards, and I wanted to be there to show up for them. And I
Yeah.
knew if I was working at a restaurant or even a day job, 9 to 5 or whatever, there was no way I could get off for those moments and those days. So it was just really important to me to be as present as a mom as I could be and show up for all the things, especially since I knew that like their dad was not going to be that person. So it was important that I showed up for me and for them in all the areas as much as possible. So I think
Very
that that was
nice.
really my driving factor in like why this had to work. Plus, I mean, I went into the restaurant industry when I was like 18, 19 years old, like really young. Um, and I got stuck into it. It's good money. It can be good money. And if anybody's been in the restaurant industry, they know that it's like once you get in, it's a little hard to get out because you kind of just get stuck into the cycle of making cash every day. So it was just like really hard. And I never really worked like an office type job. So when I went into the restaurant industry and then picked up photography, it was like, these are my only two skills. Like I can't work a 9 to 5. Like I'm not built that way. I'm not built to go into work at 8 a.m. and work until 5 p.m. Like who would get the kids from school? Like
Yeah.
no one's going to be there. You know, my extended families, they all work all the time. They're not like super helpful. It was just me. Like I had to do it all. So it was like, I have to make my schedule. I have to make this work to make the life that I want to live and I want my kids to live.
Very nice. Yeah. So people like often people's drive as parents comes from one of two things. Either they had a similar experience they're trying to recreate or they had an opposite experience. And you just talked about your personal drive to be able to create the experience for your kids of somebody being there to ask them how their day was and knowing who was going to drive them to school and pick them up. Which of those two categories would you put yourself into? That was what your childhood was like, or it wasn't, and so you were hoping to create something different?
Oh, for sure it was the opposite.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that was not that my mom was a terrible mom and my dad and my mom split up when I was really little, early in elementary school years, and he had moved to Georgia for a little bit and then moved to Ohio. So like we saw my dad growing up, but it wasn't a lot. We mainly lived with my mom, but she worked all the time. I had two younger siblings that I would have to get up for school. I'd have to get myself up and get them up and get us up all ready to get to the bus in the morning by ourselves. So like I was almost like I wasn't the oldest. I had an older brother, but I was like that older child, like
Yeah.
persona that had to do all like the taking care of the younger sibling vibes. Um, so I guess maybe that kind of I took that with me into adulthood, but I also have very much been like, okay, my mom was this way. I'm not really, because she wanted to be maybe, but because that was just the life that was dealt to her.
Yeah.
But I did not like I want to be completely opposite. Like I find myself every day like not that she was a bad mom, but just I don't want to be like that. Like I want to take the kids to school. I want to be there. I want to show up. I want to be interested in all their hobbies, their activities. Like my son and I, he's 13, we've been mountain biking this year and I am not an outdoorsy person at all, but I'm like he's a 13-year-old boy. How else am I going to connect with him unless I start like liking some of the things that he likes? So, and again, I would not be able to do that, on a Tuesday afternoon and go mountain biking with him if I had a regular job.
I hear
So,
you. I
um,
hear you. No, thank you for sharing that. That was a personal question, and I appreciate you going in there, but I think that that's helpful for people to
yeah.
understand who are in a similar situation now or in the future. So now let's dig into you've got a business that you're running that you love, and it's a photography business. And so this is client work. Photographers work when the clients are available,
Mhm.
and weddings are not usually over a lunch hour, sometimes, but not usually. They are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the times that everything else happens. So you realize that your professional life is conflicting with your real life home life. And what happens? What is the pivotal change that comes up that you're like, I gotta shift?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm sorry, the sun is like starting to poke out this video. But it was 2021. Well, I went full time in my business with photography. I was able to quit my restaurant job. Um, right at um, I went full time in my business in 2019. Fall of 2019, 2020 hit. I was like, oh my goodness, weddings were being canceled. left and right. I thankfully had not had a ton of 2020 weddings like really booked on my calendar. So I got really, really, really lucky because a lot of my wedding photographer friends were being like, I just having to cancel contracts and push weddings, and dates were just like going crazy. It was weird. It was wild. It was not good. But I spent that whole first half of 2020 just like helping anybody else that I could in the industry and just still like trying to book weddings for 2021 because everybody that was scheduling their weddings for 2020 was pushing. And so they were like, well, we need a new photographer because our photographer's not available in 2021. So I got really lucky and I booked up my 2021 season like the fullest and biggest that I'd ever had. I had tons of weddings in the fall. It was crazy. Now, at this time, I also had the kids only during the week, and their dad had them on the weekends. So that had been our schedule. Like he had the weekends because I was shooting weddings on the weekends. Well, going into 2021, a lot of like personal drama happened with him, and I got the kids full time. So going into my busiest fall season in 2021, I went to having the kids only during the week to having them all the time, full time. And I had wedding upon wedding upon wedding, like back to back to back, all from like September to like late November.
Yep.
Plus, there was school. I mean, in the holiday season, anywhere from October to December is crazy with school and holidays and activities and this and that. And the kids were in uh, late elementary school and middle school. So, like, social life was getting bigger. They were wanting to go out here and go there and do this and that. So, my daughter was in volleyball also at the time, which was very time consuming. She had practice 3 nights a week, and then Saturday mornings / midday, she would have games and like tournaments and stuff. I survived going through the wedding season barely. I had to find like babysitters constantly because my significant other that I'm with now, he's a restaurant manager, so he works crazy hours too. So the kids were having to stay with like friends or my sister or whoever because I was like, I can't leave them home alone. My son's only like 10 for, 12, 13 hours because I was at a wedding that was like an hour away. So it's just crazy. And I was just getting really, really exhausted and stressed on finding people to watch the kids, help me with the kids, and then like also just being gone all the time. It was just very exhausting, and then having to worry about them and the situation that we were in personally. And I felt like I was getting back into like the whole like tied down to my job feeling that you have with like a 9 to 5 or the restaurant industry because with weddings, you can't like reschedule. You're
You
right. So
cannot.
like you're locked in. Like with portrait sessions and family sessions, if something had come up, I could always, text my client or message them, email them and be like, something's very important's come up. Can we reschedule this family session? And usually they were okay with that. But with weddings, there was no rescheduling. So I felt very tied in, locked in. And then by the end of the season, I was so burnt out, so tired, so stressed. I had one last wedding. It was December, or I think it was December 6th. I remember it like it was yesterday. And the wedding day was crazy. It fell way behind. And so I was already stressed. And that same day, my daughter had her first big volleyball tournament and I had to miss it. And I was so heartbroken because I had that wedding booked a year in advance
Yep.
because people book so far out. So you had that day locked in. So whenever they like gave us the date for her tournament in November, I was like, well, I'm going to miss it because I have a wedding and I can't reschedule that. I can't be like, hey, my daughter's got a tournament. It's really important to me to be there for her. Can we, can we push this wedding? Obviously, that's not an option.
Right.
So I had to miss the tournament, and she's texting me the whole time that she's there at the tournament, like while I'm at the wedding. She's like, we just won our first game. Like, we're going on to the second round. We get to play again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's so exciting. And then she's like, oh my God, I just played the best game I've ever played. I'm so sad you're not here. And I'm like dying inside because I'm like, this is why I went into business for myself. So I could be there for these things and like celebrate with her and like watch her and support her because she's my life. She's my why, her and my son. So it's like so heartbroken. And I mean, she ended up winning like second place and she won. It was like her first trophy. She's not really a sports kid. So like it was a big deal for her to like be in this tournament and like win. It was her first and only trophy that she's ever won to the date. And she's almost 16. And I missed it. And at that point, like I was like, I do not want to do weddings full time. Like this
Okay.
is it just like clicked. I was like, no more. Like
So that's
we're
December 2021. And so
yes.
the pivotal event when you realized that this thing that you had built for yourself to empower yourself and design your life was actually in conflict with the life that you wanted now, right? So it has been, it's 2021. It's been three full years.
Yep.
3 full years. You say to yourself, I don't want to do any weddings anymore. So, what did making this change actually look like for you, and how long did it take? Because you mentioned that people book weddings a year in
Yeah.
advance. So, walk us through a little bit about how that actually, like, one is making the decision in your mind, and then the next thing is actually making it happen. What did it look like, and how did it come about?
Yeah. I felt like at the end of 2021, I just like I hit a wall and I didn't even like think about really I just took like a big mental break for the rest of the year because that was early December. And then going into 2022, I actually well, no, that's not true because I did advertise late 21. I advertised for my first CEO business retreat. I hosted a retreat for small business like owners, like a small little retreat here in Knoxville where I live. And like that kind of catapulted my coaching and like community building like passion. I've always been a helper. Like I've always been somebody that wants to like give advice and coach and teach. I'm a type 2 on the Enneagram, like core, like through and through to the core. So if anybody's like have a problem, I'm like, let me see if I can help you. So I hosted this little retreat. It was like 13 of us, and I think that that was like a huge eye opener. Like I loved it so much being able to help people like one on one. We just covered like we had a whole weekend. We stayed in downtown Knoxville and we just like coached or I coached them on like topics of like money management. They were not all photographers. Some were wedding planners, some were florists, some were photographers. Um, and so from there, I just like was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to coach and help other women small business owners and photographers mainly because that was my industry and trade. So I knew mostly about that. I want to help them create their own rich life because
Okay.
I knew that that's kind of what I had done and where what my drive was, and I wanted to help other women get to that point as well.
Very
So
nice.
I'm
Okay, so I didn't realize that that was the part of the story because you are still working today as a photographer. So I didn't realize that that was the direction that you took. So did you still work some weddings in 2022?
yes, I still had some because they had booked 2022 weddings had booked me in
Yeah.
21. So I still had a good handful throughout the year 2021, and then I had two in 2023. No, I had a couple in 2023. I had two in the beginning of this year, 2024. And then actually just picked up one this past weekend, just maybe honestly because they had some major family issues and their photographer bailed, so I had to take it. So I'm still kind of like doing a little bit here and there, but only when I feel like I can take on a wedding
Yeah.
and whenever I know like there's nothing going to be happening that month or whatever. Um, and I will never like book my whole entire fall season up with like, 20 weddings or anything crazy. Um, I think I've just learned, okay, full time, this is not for me. Maybe 5 weddings a year, strategically placed. If an inquiry comes in and it's like in February when there's not really a lot going on, then
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I could take it here and there. Because I do love it. It's not that I don't love weddings. It's not that I don't love photography. And I'm still photographing families. I have a lot of repeat families that I've been with for the past 11 years, and I still photograph them here and there. But it's more on my own time. I feel like I have more of a control on it, and I'm really just focusing on trying to build the education side of my business and the coaching side of my business for new photographers, because that I can do during the day, during the school day, or on my own time, or it can be passive income, or it can be online courses where it's only like a little bit here or a little bit there. So that's the new goal for my business, is to take everything I've learned over the past 11 years, whether it's just photography skills, editing skills, composition, everything in the technical side, but then also on the business side and also on the mindset and the burnout side, and teach all of that to new photographers so they don't get to the point where I had gotten to where I was like hating everything that I had built for myself. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, it does. It makes a lot of sense. So you don't know this about me, but back in early 2000s, I owned a photo studio, and did families and weddings. And I studied photography, so I knew I used to in college I earned beer money doing people's weddings and just trading the film and stuff like that. But I knew how much work weddings were, and I used to sit down anytime people were like, "Hey, we'd like to do your wedding." I was like, "Okay, what?" What is the number that will
Hmm.
make this worth it for me when it comes up? Because it's a lot of time. It's not just is something going to come up in your own life, but also, if you're sick, you've still got to show up and you've got to bring your A game because they're not going to do it again.
Yeah.
And so that's a really big impact. And then having the intelligence of your own life to be able to shift that and say, okay, I can now weigh in as an industry expert and a coach. I think that's brilliant. So when you decide in 2021 you're going to make this shift, you're going to step back, you're not going to do as much client work and as many weddings. What were you hoping would change in your life? Like what was the thing that you thought would happen?
That's a good question. Um, what would I was hoping that would happen? Maybe just more that I could own my own time again and just
Okay.
be more in control of my schedule, which I can say that that is definitely been something that has happened and it has been glorious. Like I have had Saturdays off where I've just enjoyed the day and I'm like,
Okay.
this is wild. I'm not serving tables or I'm not working a wedding all day, an 8 to 10 hour wedding on my feet, like running around like a crazy person. Um, and that's honestly so great. And then like being able to do things with the kids on the Saturdays too is has been amazing. And not missing anything. Like I've been able to be, there for all the things, which is so, so great.
That's awesome. All right, now flipping that question around, were there any surprise impacts that came up after you made this change? Like, did things happen that you were not expecting when you made this shift to like moving away from weddings and
Yeah. Um, there's been several things. I almost feel as though I lost a little bit of my identity, I feel like, because I felt like I built my life on being a portrait and wedding photographer. Like that was kind of like what I was known for. And I knew I started like when I was younger, before I took up this profession, like I didn't really have anything that I was necessarily like super proud of, like to call
okay.
of like what I had done. Like I got pregnant really young, I got married really young, and then I got divorced really young, and I had dropped out of college because I'd gotten pregnant, and I was just a not just a waitress, but I hadn't really done anything that I felt like I was really proud of, right? Building this business, teaching myself photography. Like I didn't go to any classes, I was self-taught. All the business side of things, like I basically taught myself. Like I just learned it over the years and went to little workshops here and there that were in person in Knoxville. So like everything I felt like I had built from scratch. Like I worked so hard to get to where I was. And it just was who I was. I was really proud of all that. And then to kind of like be like, okay, I don't want to do this as, full time as I was with the client
Right.
work and the weddings and stuff. It was like, okay, well, like,
Right. If I'm not
who am
this,
I
who
now?
am I?
Yeah.
Right. Without
Yeah.
this,
So
who am
it's
I? Yeah, 100%.
so shifting the mindset into like telling people like, oh, what do you do? Like, oh, I'm a professional photographer or I'm a portrait and wedding photographer. Now it's
Yeah.
like I'm a coach. I'm like, am I a coach? Like that's so weird. And so I'm still growing. And it's like
Right.
when I did the same thing when I first started doing photography because you get
Yeah,
that
yeah.
imposter syndrome of
Yeah.
like, am I a photographer? I mean, I'm still like learning, I'm still growing, but yeah, I mean, I am a photographer. So now it's like I know I can teach people. I know I am a coach. But like to say that out loud verbally, it's like it's hard. It was really hard for me because it was almost like I was starting all over again in my
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of went into it thinking like, oh, I've been a professional photographer and I'm well known in the industry in my area. Going and switching gears into coaching is going to be so easy. Like I know what I'm doing. I could do it like the back of my hand. And then switching into the education world, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing now because it's just totally different. Um, Marketing yourself as a coach and as an educator is completely different than as a photographer. As a photographer, you just post some pretty pictures and talk about what you offer and talk about how you love wedding
Yeah.
days and blah, blah, blah. And people are like, oh, I love her work. I want to book her. As a coach, trying to convince new photographers that are scared to invest in themselves and invest in their business with education because they don't know if they're ready yet or if they don't have the income yet. They are, struggling here and there, but they're afraid to ask out for help, trying to find the words, the messaging, and the marketing to hit their pain points and convince them, like, yes, you need a coach because you are going to reach your goals a million times faster with a coach than you are if you're not have somebody on your side, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so I've had to work really, really hard over the past several years to like change my messaging, tweak it, work it. This new website that I have out now is been about, I started it in May and I just finished it last month. Or no, I went live November 1st, so this month, um, at the time of recording this. And it's just been a labor of love
Yeah.
and so much knowledge and so many years of thought processes and tweaking of my words to convince new photographers that this is something that they need. Um,
Yeah.
so
So I
it's
just want
it's
to double
been
click on that because we're talking today about a change you made in your profession, right? And the
mhm,
theme behind the concept of imperfect adulting. One of the hardest things that I found to explain is people are like, why are you using the word adulting? And I said, and I think I'm older than you. I'm 51. And I said, because this is the thing. We do this shift of who we are over and over and over again. Like you're a kid in high school and then you shift and you enroll in college or you get a job and if you lean too far into any of those things, you become a new mom, you're a wife, and then you're not a wife. Anytime you lean too far into one of those identities, whether it's a career, a profession, a relationship, even a hobby, right? Even a hobby, like I'm a mountain biker, I'm a triathlete. Anytime you lean too far into one of those things, it's hard to make the transition. You find
mhm.
yourself in that question like, oh, well, without this, what does that even mean about me? If I'm not a photographer anymore, who am I? And if I'm not a wedding photographer, what does that mean about me? And so you rapid fire went through some major changes and choices that you made growing up that led you to this, which I just want to mirror that back to you and say it is no surprise to me listening to this that when you were like, all right, I'm going to do this thing that matches up more with my life, you were able to pull that off because you had made similar changes before and been able to do it. So kudos to you. Feel good
Thank
about
you.
that. Really, really do. We talked a little bit, we've talked about the change, and now I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm interested to hear because you sound like a very, very self-reliant, independent person. And you talked about as a kid, you were the person in the house that was waking up your siblings. When you were making this change, there's two parts of this question. Who around you did you have that was supportive of you doing this? Like, what kind of support did you have around you that helped you make this change? And the decisions. And then the next part of that question is what support do you wish you had had?
That is a great question. I feel like my partner now, he is very supportive of everything I do, but it's more in like he has no clue of what I do. And he's like, whatever you decide, I trust you because I know that you're going to make a good decision. And I mean, he doesn't have the an entrepreneurial mindset, like he's always worked like a salary job for like a corporate company and he loves that. Like he enjoys that. So like he's very supportive in what I do, but he's not built that way. So he doesn't understand all the things that go into like what I do. So he's like, you do you and I trust you. And if you need me, I'm here. And I'm like, great. Okay, cool. Which is perfect for me because yes, I am a little bit more independent and I like to make my decisions and I kind of like hold strong to those decisions. I'm like, this is what I want to do, and you're not going to change my mind because I'm set on it. Um, so whenever I said I wanted to quit weddings and go into coaching, he's like, okay, if that's what you want to do, whatever makes you happy. And I'm like, this is it. Okay. Um, and then I feel like I have built a huge community of wedding professionals in the industry here. And so many of them were very, very supportive and like share my name with new photographers that they meet, or even wedding planners that are working with new photographers will send them my way. Like, oh, you want to learn more about weddings? You can go to Devon. And I've had several of my photographer friends, several that I'm really, really good friends with now, started off as new photographers that I coached and that I like was a mentor towards. And then we just grew into really good friends. So that's been really, really helpful because I can also kind of like use them as like reviews and advice and like almost like an affiliate kind of, because I can be like, well, we're really good friends now. We've grown really close. But also when you met me, we didn't know each other at all. And I coached you to the point where you're full time now and working like all these weddings and just taking, their thoughts and like what worked for them whenever I coached them and what helped them get to where they are now has been really great. So they've been really, really supportive. And I feel like having a community in your industry is everything.
It's
Um,
important. Yeah.
so that's really just been everything to me. I mean, my kids are supportive, but they're kids. They're
They're
like,
kids.
whatever you
They're
want to do, mom.
kids. Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
So what kind of
so
support do you wish you had had? Looking back, what would have been helpful? If you can think of anything, if
yeah.
there is anything.
Um, I don't think there's really been anything that's really that I've kind of missed. Like I said it earlier, I'm a type 2 on the Enneagram. So like I'm the helper and I'm the one that likes to help people. So it's hard for me to always ask for help. So maybe just having more type 2 friends in my community that just offer help to me without me having to ask for it. Because
Okay.
that's my struggle, I think. I am pretty self-sufficient and I'm very motivated and I'm very determined and I'm hardworking. But the type 2 in me, if I struggle, doesn't like to ask for help always. Because I don't know, I just feel like, no, I can do it on my own, or it's fun. I'll figure it out. And I think that that type 2 is just really kind of been the downfall a little bit here and there on getting me to where I really need to be or want to be in this coaching industry.
Very good. All right. So I love this story. I think that making a professional shift is realistically something that most people are going to do more than once in their life, whether it's changing employers, retooling with a totally new profession, going back to school, any of the things that happen. And
And
I think that we underprepare for
yeah,
it
and can I
because,
also,
yeah, go
sorry,
for it.
I just want to, before I forget, you're saying this and it's so true. And I feel like it is especially true for creatives
Sure.
if you're in a creative world, because we get really burnt out on one thing if we do the same thing over and over again in that mindset. So I think it's important for creatives to keep in mind that it is okay to shift. It's okay to pivot. If you're unhappy doing whatever it is that you've been doing, it's okay to pivot. Like it was okay for me to not take weddings anymore, even though I knew it was going to be a pay cut. I knew it was going to be, you know, less money yearly or monthly or whatever it was because weddings were such good income. But it was something I had to do for my mental health and for my kids. So sorry,
Very good.
just had
All
to throw that
right.
out there.
So we're going to do a couple of questions to wrap up. Before we do that, though, I want to let people know how they can find you. You let it drop that you're in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's where my favorite handbag designer is from, Patricia Nash.
I don't know
That
her, but I
you
know
know the
who
brand?
who she is. Yes.
Right, you know the brand. It's a great year in my life because she now has stores in the airport. So like I can buy my stuff from her like while I travel, which is like a great fun thing. Anyway, where people can find you at your website. You've got a new website that's up now. It'll definitely be up when people see this. Tell us about what you do and give them your new website address, which will be in the email that everybody gets and in the show notes.
Yes, it is very easy. It's devonadrian.com, and it is a photography coaching website. So
Okay.
there's going to be offers that range all over. There's private coaching, then there's also a shop that has, digital downloads and freebies and things like that. So it is great for anybody who's starting out in photography and they have a little money or they have money that they're ready to invest.
Perfect. All right. So this is so devonadrian.com, and we will, because there's a bunch of different ways to spell Devon and there's a bunch of different ways
Yes.
to spell Adrian. So it's in the show notes and in the email if you're a subscriber. All right. So now to wrap this up, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. 1, 2, 3. These are supposed to be rapid fire. They're just for fun. They're not about anything important. And the challenge is to try and answer them in like just a couple of words. So far, 100% of the people have failed at that, but that's fine because it's our show,
Yeah,
our rules. Okay.
I'm pretty wordy.
No problem. That's why I give you the pass that everybody else has done the same thing. Okay, so do you like movies? And if so, do you have a favorite comedy movie?
I would say I like movies. I don't love movies. And my favorite comedy movie, I don't know that I have one.
Okay, all right. So you
I'm
don't
not
have one.
gonna
It's a
lie.
hard question. It's a hard
That
question.
is.
All right. Now, this question I love even more because you used to not have these. It's a lazy Saturday morning.
Mm.
Nothing on the to-do list. It's raining or snowing, so it's a homebound kind of day. Are you catching up on housework, making a lovely breakfast with your family, or sleeping in and being lazy?
Sleeping in, but not too late, maybe like 9 o'clock-ish, and then reading on the couch under a blanket with a cup of coffee and my dogs.
Nice. All right, very good. What is the first, as in earliest, like when you were youngest, world news event that you remember?
Hmm. Probably 9/11. That's
Okay.
probably the first one that's really sticks out of my head.
Yeah, that's one of those where were you win
Yeah.
kind of things. Exactly. All right. Thank you very much, Devon. This
You're
has been
welcome.
fantastic. And I want to say thank you for being a guest on the Imperfect Adulting podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Obvi again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.